can't think of the right word. In a way, the word that comes into my mind, which isn't totally the word, is satisfaction, which I don't like that word, um, but something that feels like so right. And I mean, to me, when I thought about alignment and I was thinking of partnership, and I said with yourself, I was thinking of, to begin with, this whole idea of, or this whole feeling of, when we talk about wellness or health and well-being lately, and is that is really partnering with yourself on that aspect. I think we've kind of moved, a lot of people have moved away from that. They kind of place all their health and well-being sort of outside of themselves, if that makes sense. And they don't truly partner with themselves toward that health and well-being.
Yeah, I like how you language that. Um, I think most of us have this training in a sense of being a non-integrated being. That there are parts of us. There's this. There's the me that's at home. There's it's disintegrated. In other words, and one of the really neat things that I
It's like the
hear in this
charger.
opportunity to partner with yourself is the reintegration and bringing forth all that you possess in terms of experience, capacities, capabilities, knowledge, the whole, all of it, the all of it of all of it.
And I think what differs for me is because if we could each get to that place, and then when we were to partner with other people or form an alliance with other people, we've come as our whole self versus those sort of scattered parts of ourselves. So each one of us is present for the other person as an integrated being.
So it's basically alignment before alliance.
That's right, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, it sounds like being a much richer instrument, you know, being more like a Stradivarius than a ukulele. Although they're both really wonderful at what they need to do. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, Lisa, but I thought that would connect with you. Can you imagine if Stradivarius they made, or Guarnerius, if they had made ukuleles? What would a ukulele look like made by an Italian from the 1500s?
Now
So
I've
if
lost my health. I've lost every thought now.
you know, everything just kind of brings me back to that. One of my favorite lines in any movie is a great actor saying, you know, you make me want to be a better man. You know, where does that come from? When you're around somebody that you hold in such esteem, that you're strong enough with who you are that you think you can work on yourself, and the bar is being raised by this partner that you have, or ally, or whatever word it is, that mostly we don't say things like that, do we? Mostly we just work a little bit harder. We show up a little bit earlier. We make sure we're, properly dressed for the occasion, etc.
No, I think we more sit there and just watch the bar staying exactly where it is.
Yeah.
Like don't make me push it because but once you realize you can actually move the bar and it feels good, and somebody makes you feel that way. Moving the bar is always a good thing.
Yeah, and again, making that declaration out loud to another human being, who you are for me is a reminder of what I can do and be on purpose about to make myself more valuable to you as both a partner and as an ally.
Because
I
they say
don't know.
like
What?
if you want to bring up movies too, like one of the worst lines in a movie, but everybody loved it though, was "You complete me," and it's not how human beings should be. I mean, it goes back to against everything we've just been saying today. Like you have to be strong on yourself and all this. You are the one that creates you. It's nobody else's. business, basically.
I absolutely love that you said that particular one, because what comes before that, in the Bruce Springsteen song, is when she says, I love him. I love him for the man he is becoming. I love him for the man he wants to be. Not I love him for who he is.
Right. Right. That one I'll push aside.
I think that there were some psychologists that said this is why most, a lot of marriages end up in divorce, because women think they can change the person they're getting married to. And that's just a little bit of humor from Psych 101.
There was a comedian that pointed out like the horribleness of most love songs. Like if you pick apart the lyrics, you go, why would nobody would ever feel that way? I'll die without you, or you know what I mean?
Well, it's like most movies that happen about love, which talk about the falling in love part,
Right.
which never really talk about the relationship part. It's always like leading up and getting into the relationship, but not the nitty gritty of being in a relationship. Because as somebody, I once saw an interview and the guy said, that's because if you got into the nitty gritty, nobody would watch the movie. People don't want to be there. So
we want Hallmark.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Hallmark's easier to digest too.
Yes,
It's kind of funny because like how much of that is caught up in how confusing identity with an experience. So like it wouldn't be a very good movie if you said my connection and partnership to you has given me a sense of completion. That's not going to sell. It might be a more accurate and healthy approach, because there's the both and. I mean, obviously, it's our connections to other people that create, feelings and experiences that we value, that we couldn't achieve on our own because we're not, in isolation. We can be fulfilled within ourselves, but then we can have different experiences of the expression of that fulfillment in partnership with other people. But that would make for a very confusing movie, I think.
And that one that you just described has probably been made many times. With that subtext being completely unapparent to whoever's watching the movie.
Yeah, sure. And actually, and it's funny because Jan said something that you were saying it's hard to describe like the words. And my mentor in spiritual counseling, he's like, that's when someone's touching something that's like core, because there really aren't words. So you end up just kind of speaking in terms of the symptoms, like feelings of gratitude or satisfaction or whatever it is, but you really can't put it into words. So now we're trying to convey these complex feelings that we all have in a digestible shorthand to kind of, and was it really about the line or was it about the connection that they were trying to portray between two actors, So it's interesting though how sometimes it hits and sometimes it misses.
Well, as far as relationships, one of the best podcast or interviews I ever saw was the author was Alain de Botton, and he wrote one of the most read New York Times articles or editorials or something of all times, and it's titled "Why I Will Marry the Wrong Person." And if you listen to the interview, which I'm trying to remember who he did it with for a moment here, her name escapes me, and I love her, but and she interviews him, and it's hysterically funny. I mean, he's really funny, and he talks about, how we go into a relationship and that whole idea of. So I can send it out to you guys because it's really.
Yeah, no, I would love to check that out. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's really kind of a cultural deal that we get into relationships and partnerships and marriages and all the rest of that with the hope that the other person will turn out to be the person we're supposed to be with, as opposed to rolling the sleeves up in a particular way and doing the work that it takes to be the partner that causes that relationship to endure through time. And most of the people that I have interviewed, at one point back in the 80s and the 90s, I was collecting couples. I was collecting people, that had been married at least 40 years. The all-time winners were actually this beautiful couple who had been married for 67 years when I met them, and we celebrated their 75th wedding anniversary together. And yes, you can do the math. They both lived to late 90s, and it was one of the most impressive things to hear either one of these two people talk. You would never in 100 years have put them together. Not one. No, I mean, no, that can't happen. He can't be with her. What are you kidding me? His praise of her was, I wouldn't trade her for a spotted dog.
And I looked it up. So he was interviewed by Krista Tippett
Yeah.
of onbeing.org. And so
there we are.
I wonder if sometimes it's forgetting the nature of impermanence that can put pressure on relationships. It's like as soon as you were mentioning, Bill, a couple together for 67 years, I was thinking about my grandparents who were like that. But then I flashed on my mentor, who it was his third marriage, where he found a love so powerful that his daughter from his second marriage said all she needed to do to understand everything there was to know about love was to look at John looking at Cecilia. And he had two relationships that were both beautiful, and then he was hysterical. His first wife introduced him to his second wife, said she would be a better fit for you after they had divorced. And it's just, and knowing John, Bill, I'm sure.
Absolutely. There's a famous handoff from George Harrison to Eric Clapton, where
Sorry,
literally said, "Take my wife, please."
right.
Yeah, no, but it was an interesting thing because there's so many ways it can express, and in the end, what struck me is they all have beginnings and they have middles and they all have endings. It's somehow every relationship, no matter how powerful, beautiful, meaningful, it will change and it will end, and we don't get to choose when that will be.
And for most people, it's not while they're still alive.
Mhm.
That relationship goes on and on and on, in every conversation that gets brought up, every memory,
Yeah.
and the other neat thing that's kind of cool too is I've also met a lot of people that have been married multiple times. They just like being married, okay? Uh, and in many cases, it's like, yeah, we did that for a little while. It was a lot of fun. We got a lot of laughs, that sort of deal. But then the stories that they shared, and then talking about what they really miss about that person that they were first married to 35, 40 years ago,
Mhm.
and I think it's really revealing about the speaker. Probably tells me nothing at all about the person they're talking about, but what you do remember and what you report to other people about a relationship from the past really is very generous in terms of shining a light on something that's important enough for you to commit to speech right this minute,
Mm.
and then again, that does live on in this moment because it's being spoken.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Yeah, that's another little tip. Here's a pointer for y'all to take home. Every time you're thrown to tell people about how miserable she was 25, 30 years ago, swallow that thought and then compliment the crap out of her and see what that feels like.
That would be cool.
Give it a shot. Anyhow, So we've really covered the beach on going back to partnership in a